There's a lot to like about J.D. Vance, the current first term senator from Ohio. Young, insightful, smart, a lot of different adjectives you can use to describe him. But it's his intelligence and his insightfulness that has allowed him to pick up on a provision in the current Ukraine funding bill that is a potential trap for Donald J. Trump should he be reelected to the presidency. What am I talking about? Hang on, folks. We're going to get into all this in just 1 second. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your front porch conservative. Step on up to my electronic front porch and let's talk. Current foreign aid supplemental bill that is working its way through the Senate is still being debated and voted on as of the recording of this video tonight. Amendments are being offered, arguments are being made, votes are being taken, and by all accounts, much to the chagrin of those who oppose this bill, it looks like it's on a glide path to pass either on Tuesday or at the absolute latest on Wednesday. But it's during these arguments and debates that the junior senator from Ohio, Republican J.D. Vance, has discovered something that's caused him much concern, such that he has sent a memo around to all of his Republican colleagues in the Senate and to folks on Capitol Hill, and furthermore has written an article explaining the concern and going into the background of how it is that the Senate has gotten to where it is on the current foreign aid bill. So I thought we'd take a look at the article that Senator J.D. Vance posted at theamericanconservative.com, go through some of it and make some commentaries. So, as with all things, here we go. Article written by J.D. Vance, The Republican Plot Against Donald Trump. The inside story of how Congress is pursuing endless war in Ukraine and trying to stop a Trump election. By J.D. Vance, we read the following. This weekend, Senate Democrats, joined by a few Republicans, including most Republican leadership, forced through a supplemental security that spends close to $100 billion, most of it on Ukraine. It was the culmination of months of secretive negotiations on border security. Those negotiations produced a border security product unacceptable to most Republicans. So, then Republicans voted it down, and then an hour later, we were debating a security supplemental with border security stripped out. The quick pivot, refusal to negotiate another round of border security, and the immediate shift to blame Trump confirmed one thing. Republican leadership wasn't serious about border security. They cared most about Ukraine funding and saw the border negotiations as a distraction. This extinguished any hope of real border security before the negotiations began. The story our leadership tells is that, quote, the politics of border security had changed because of Donald Trump. James Lankford, Republican of Oklahoma, dutifully negotiated a bipartisan border product. Conservative Republicans encouraged this negotiation. When the product took shape, Donald Trump demanded conservatives walk. Trump argued that Joe Biden didn't need a border security package, which was true, so Republicans should simply ask that Joe Biden do his job. This intervention allegedly killed a great piece of border policy. This is a fairy tale that makes conservative senators and Donald Trump look bad, perhaps by design. In truth, the demand conservative senators made at the beginning of the negotiation went like this. Joe Biden can fix the problem, but he refuses, so we must make him do his job. This posture came along with specific demands from senators ranging from Ukraine aid supporters like Marco Rubio to Ukraine aid skeptics like me and those in the middle like Ron Johnson. We argued that we could condition further Ukraine aid on decreased illegal border crossings. In other words, Congress would appropriate money to Ukraine in stages if Biden refused to drive down border crossings, he wouldn't get his money for Ukraine. The deal, as envisioned by conservatives, was apparently never on the table. According to both Democrat colleagues and some Republicans, this is because Republican leadership, specifically Mitch McConnell, Senate Minority Leader, Republican from Kentucky, refused to push the Democrats on this issue. Other Republicans have argued instead that even if Mitch McConnell empowered Langford to make this demand, Democrats would never have agreed. Okay. So far, this sounds like a fairly accurate telling of the information from Vance's point of view, and you have to understand he is a severe skeptic of aid to Ukraine. Can't say as I necessarily disagree with him, but we're not going to plow that ground again for right now. But anyway, this is the inside story of what happened on the border negotiation bill. So let's go a little bit further into this article and see what else is said. 1 second, and we will get there in just a moment. Going further down into this article, we read the following. The bill will pass, albeit by a tiny margin, with a majority of Republicans opposing the bait and switch. This current episode is finished, at least in the Senate, but there will be many reruns. The form of this debacle will replay itself to the great detriment of Donald Trump and other Republican candidates. 3 facts are important. First, voters range from ambivalent to outright hostile on further Ukraine aid. Second, a subset of Republican senators are obsessed with Ukraine aid, caring about this issue more than any other. And third, a majority of House Republicans oppose further Ukraine aid and demand strong border security measures regardless of the details of a Ukraine package. It is easy to sketch out how these facts will manifest themselves in political reality. The Senate Ukraine bill goes to the House, where leadership there cannot bring it up to the floor without endangering House Speaker Mike Johnson. So the House will either refuse to vote on the Ukraine bill or will attach a strong border security bill, like H.R. 2, and then send it back to the Senate. In public and private, Senate Republican leadership will undermine the House leadership and the Republican presidential nominee. Democrats could try to force House leadership to bring up Ukraine aid with a discharge petition, an approach that would hand control of the House floor over to Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries with the aid of a few House Republicans. Speaker Johnson could fight this maneuver aggressively. If he does, he will be attacked by Senate Republican leaders, at least privately, and will face another negative news cycle. If he doesn't, his own conference will turn against him. The cycle will replay over the government funding deadline in March. It will replay over the omnibus debate that follows. It will replay any time the U.S. Congress must actually do something. Whatever takes shape, the basic game will be the same. The media, obsessed with any story that makes Trump look bad, will blame him and, quote, MAGA Republicans in the House. They will blame Trump for the chaos. They will blame Trump for extremism. They will refuse to report on Biden's failings and instead focus on internal Republican division. They will point to Republican senators attacking Donald Trump and House Republicans, just as they have over the last week. Democrats will run advertisements. See, even Mitch McConnell thinks Trump is being ridiculous. And they will rinse and repeat this narrative all the way to the November election. Going a little bit further into the article, then we get to the trap. For months, I have been confident that Donald Trump would be reelected as president, and this is how you snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. The Republican establishment is going to war for more Ukraine money. They don't care if a second Trump term is collateral damage. But of course, they have an insurance plan even if Trump pulls it off. Though few have noticed, buried in the bill's text is a kill switch for the next Trump presidency. The legislation explicitly requires funding for Ukraine well into the next presidential term. The Washington Post has already reported this provision as being added to control Donald Trump. It gets even worse from there. Back in 2019, Democrats articulated a novel theory of impeachment based on Trump's refusal to spend money from the USAI, Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative. 5 years after impeaching Trump for refusing to spend money on Ukraine, they have drafted a new law that will again require Trump to spend more money on Ukraine. If he negotiates an end to the war, as he has promised to do, they will undoubtedly argue he has broken the law. We are nearly a year away from an election that could give Trump the presidency, and Ukraine-obsessed Republicans have already given the Democrats a predicate to impeach him. Slava Ukraini, America be damned. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a very insightful piece from U.S. Senator J.D. Vance. All right, let's get into it. It is no secret to anybody who's a watcher of this channel and a listener to my commentary that I am not impressed with Mitch McConnell on most issues anymore. back when they had the majority, okay, judges are one thing, but even then I wasn't real happy because mostly they're Federalist Society types that aren't really all that interested in common law and making sure the rights of the accused or the innocent are upheld. But laying that aside, McConnell's been bitterly disappointing on any number of different things, and Ukraine funding is another one of those deals. This bill, I think J.D. Vance is right. It's going to get through the Senate. And the lengths that the Republican leadership is going to make this happen are absolutely extraordinary, to the point that when it does get out of the Senate and go over to the House, odds are, according to Vance, they're going to undercut Mike Johnson at every turn. Certain Republicans in the Senate and in the House are bound and determined they're going to get this supplemental bill to more money for Ukraine overseas and out the door of Washington, D.C. Now, we can debate whether that's good or bad. You guys know my feeling on the whole matter. But it's even gone so far as not only are they going to put more money out the door for Ukraine, they're going to put a trap in this bill for Donald Trump. If what Vance is reporting is correct, and I have no reason to think he's lying, they have basically built in a provision that if Trump gets back in and he doesn't spend all the money that's laid out in this supplemental that goes 2 or 3 years into what would be a second Donald Trump term, then potentially the House could take up the question of impeachment again if the Democrats ever get control. Yeesh. Absolutely amazing. The hatred for Donald Trump knows no bounds. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Trump's perfect, nor is he a saint, but he would be the executive running the government of the United States. But the policy wonks in Washington, D.C. are so obsessed with making sure they maintain control, regardless of who's in the White House, that they're willing to go so far as to scuttle any potential success in a Trump second term. Vance is right. If Trump negotiates an end to the Ukraine war, which personally I hope he does, then they could still hang him out to dry because they're saying he violated the law, he didn't spend the money that we appropriated. An old argument that goes back to the days of Nixon, as far as the Congress appropriating and the executive impounding. But we'll see what happens. Now, by way of further update on this bill, where's it at right now in the Senate? Well, we've got this piece of news. From thehill.com, Senate pushes Ukraine funding forward despite conservative delay tactics. A bipartisan coalition of senators on Monday night took another step toward passing funding for Ukraine, Israel, and other defense priorities, approving 3 procedural motions over the staunch opposition of conservatives who have pulled out all the stops to delay the bill. Senators voted 66-33 to end dilatory debate. It's not dilatory. It actually ought to be going on to this hour. On the $95 billion package, setting up a final vote for early Tuesday morning to send it to the House where it faces an uncertain future. Senators Bernie Sanders, independent of Vermont, and Jeff Merkley, Democrat of Oregon, voted no. Merkley had voted with Democrats to advance the bill on earlier procedural matters. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, touted the bill before the vote as a down payment for the survival of Western democracy and the survival of American values. Oh, for the love of God, I'm going to puke. Anyway, so that's where it's at in the House, the Senate. Now, I said the other day I expected this thing to pass the Senate. Unfortunately, I think that's going to be the case. And I also expected it to pass the House. That is what I said the other night. However, a ray of light has come out of the House tonight. I take you back once again to thehill.com. Take a look at this. Speaker Johnson fires warning shot as Senate prepares to vote on Ukraine aid. Mike Johnson, Republican Louisiana, Speaker of the U.S. House, fired a warning shot at the Senate's foreign aid package Monday night, criticizing the $95.3 billion supplemental as the upper chamber inches closer to a final vote on the legislation. In a statement, Johnson slammed the package for excluding border security provisions. Quote, "The Senate's foreign aid bill is silent on the most pressing issue facing our country, and suggested he will not bring it to a floor vote if it clears the upper chamber. Quote, in the absence of having received any single border policy change from the Senate, the House will have to continue to work on its own will on these important matters, Johnson wrote. America deserves better than the Senate status quo. Well, all right, Mikey. Now, that threat, and that is exactly what I think it is, could take one of two forms. Either A, Johnson just flat out refuses to bring the foreign aid supplemental bill up for a vote in the House and say, we're not doing it. If he does that, that could lead to option 2, which is, in the absence of taking up the Senate's foreign aid funding bill, Johnson and the House Republicans work up something on their own that puts back in the border security provisions that basically the Senate stripped out before they sent over their version of aid to Ukraine. It could also be that J.D. Vance is right, that Hakeem Jeffries and other members of the House, including Republicans, work on what's called a discharge petition to get the Senate foreign aid bill to the floor, regardless of whether Mike Johnson wants to take it up or not. But at least for right now, it sounds like somebody has stiffened the spine of the current House Speaker. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Mike Johnson. I think he's a nice guy. But I also think that's his problem, or at least part of it anyway. He's a nice guy. I don't know that he's got everything he needs in order to be able to withstand the tumult that the Senate will bring to his doorstep. And part of the reason he can't is he doesn't necessarily have a lot of numbers. He's got the razorest thin majority you could ever possibly have, and it's causing him a lot of headache as far as being able to move conservative priority. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he's totally innocent in this matter, but he's fighting against a lot of different things. So, we'll keep an eye on it. We'll keep telling you what's going on. We'll pass along everything we have. And that's what I know about it for right now. But what do you think? As we start to wrap up this video, please do me some favors as always. Number 1, if you're not a subscriber to this channel, please do so. Number 2, please leave a comment below. I would love to know what you think about all this. Number 3, please hit the bell for notifications. I want to make sure you're always aware when new videos, new live streams are coming out. Number 4, please share the video around. It would really help me out a lot. And finally, give me a thumbs up. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative, and I will see you next time.